What a day to be a Husky. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's second show, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying all the content, please take a moment and subscribe. Follow wherever you listen to your audio shows right here on your phone. I use Apple. If you have Spotify, do whatever. It really helps the show grow. I genuinely appreciate all of the support. Every follow, subscription, download not only helps build our UConn community, but also generates more revenue for UConn NIL with Bleeding Blue for Good as we donate 10% of those proceeds to them. Also adding 10% of all revenue to the Husky Ticket Project. I'm a proud partner of the Husky Ticket Project and Kevin Solomon. With them, I and many others help send kids to games and make a real difference in underserved communities. I think it's a fantastic program. We're happy to help support it. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me and for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place the first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, it's a good day to be a Husky, and I'm going to do something a little different. I have the rundown here as Good Morning America, Big East Media Day, Big East Preview. We'll get to Dan Hurley in Big East Media in terms of, just kind of the rigmarole of all of that and probably show some really cool stuff. But I want to talk about the Big East in general and some of the stuff that's gone on. Also, they did the coaches poll today. UConn, a unanimous number one, as Dave Borges pointed out. Not exactly unanimous, because Dan Hurley had to vote for someone other than UConn, and I guess he voted for Marquette. So let's put this up on the stage real quick. So if you look, you have UConn with 10 first-place votes, Marquette getting 1, Creighton coming in second in the Big East preseason coaches poll, Xavier 3rd, Marquette 4, St. John's 5, Providence 6, Villanova 7, Butler 8, Georgetown 9, Seton Hall 10, and DePaul 11. So I'm going to leave that up, and I want to bring up something really quick because there's some interesting numbers. So if you go through the preseason Ken Pom, you have UConn at 5. You have Creighton at 12. You have Villanova at 20, which is really interesting to me that Ken Pom is in love with Villanova to start the season, and they're 7th in the preseason poll. So that's an interesting kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a blip, but then also St. John's is 19. I missed them. So St. John's at 19, which they are 5th in the coaches poll. Let's see where Ken Pom has Marquette. I believe they're a little lower, 22. So Ken Pom loving early Big East preseason numbers. Xavier at 30 in Ken Pom. So that is, if we look at this, UConn's at 5, Creighton at 12, Xavier at 30, Marquette at 22, St. John's at 19. So let's see, that's 5 teams in the top 30 that are in the Big East, which is pretty impressive, considering they only got 3 bids last year, and that was a travesty. So we'll see. I mean, Villanova, ranked 7th in the preseason poll here, is 20th in Ken Pom. So I'm a big Ken Pom analytics believer, but I wonder if maybe they're a little off on Villanova. We'll find out. So let's get off this real quick. I actually think there's no issues here. Like I truly can't say. I think Villanova probably should be lower just based off of the results over the last few years. I think St. John's maybe a little higher. I think you could flip St. John's and Xavier, but that's like splitting hairs. Marquette lost quite a few people. They're kind of remaking themselves. DePaul is where they should be. Surprised about Seton Hall. I know that they lost a ton of players, but as Shaheen Holloway said at Big East Media Day, he doesn't care about being ranked 10th because his teams get better as the team goes on. And I believe in Shaheen. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think Georgetown should be 11 just because Ed Cooley is a disaster. But let's take this off and look at some of the Husky honors in the preseason poll. Let's get to that. Let's remove that. So in order of significance, the freshman of the year was Big East freshman of the year, Liam McNeely. Not a shock. I think Liam, who's nursing like a calf injury, is really going to, by the time that Big East comes around, he's really going to be rounded into form. Liam is 6'7", 6'8", can score at all three levels. You saw it in some of the scrimmage. They ran plays for him where he curls around, gets a defensive player on his hip, and really seals him off for a layup. Think of Cam Spencer, but 3 to 4 inches bigger, and probably more versatile from an offensive perspective because of his size. I don't think that UConn's had a freshman that is this advanced offensively since Rudy Gay, in my opinion. Again, freshman, not all time, because you can go back through the greats: Kemba, Rip, Khalid. Like a guy that comes in with this type of pedigree, I think doesn't come around very often. We may get another one tonight, and we'll talk about Braylon Mullins in the next segment. But I think it's an interesting mix of power, finesse. He has to work on his defense a little bit, but this team is going to be so good offensively. Some of the defensive woes that we're all worried about are probably going to go by the wayside. That's my opinion. And then bringing in on the preseason third team is Aiden Mahaney. I'm happy for him. I think he's going to be fantastic for UConn. As you saw in the scrimmage, he's a true scorer and playmaker going to the hoop. I don't see any problems with him integrating into the Big East and dealing with the physicality. This kid wants the challenge. He's going to savor it. There isn't anything about his DNA that tells me he's going to back down. But I don't have a picture. But what I will tell you is, were they totally screwed up here by not putting this kid on a preseason team? Maybe I'm missing it, but I'm pretty sure he isn't on there. Let me double check. Big East player of Big East preseason teams. Yeah. Let's check it out. I'm sure you guys already know who I'm going to talk about. I have absolutely think it's a mistake that they didn't put Solo Ball on a preseason team. I think Solo is going to absolutely prove all these coaches wrong. And I'm curious as to why they do that. You know, I have no problem with the Big East Men's Basketball Player of the Year preseason being Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He averaged 17 points and 7 rebounds for a team that made it to the Sweet 16. I have no issue with that at all. The same way nobody in the Big East should have an issue with Liam McNeely being the preseason freshman of the year. But if we look at these first, second, and third teams, Alex Karaban makes the first team, which I don't think we said yet. Let's put that up there first. Give AK his due. Preseason first team. So as we talk about it, I think that's absolutely warranted, along with Cam Jones from Marquette, Bryce Hopkins from Providence, Kadari Richmond from St. John's, Eric Dixon from Villanova. No issues. Second team, Pierre Brooks from Butler, Jamal Telfort from Butler, Devion Smith from St. John's, Zach Fremantle from Xavier, and guard Davion McKnight. Okay. Now, this is where I think it gets a little silly. Ugo Poplar hasn't played in the Big East. He's from Miami. No disrespect. Same with Aiden Mahaney. So I honestly would rather see Solo on this third team than Aiden. I understand why Aiden's on it, and I'm happy for him. But if I would very seriously take off either Ryan Conwell or Stephen Ashworth, because if you're telling me that Solo Ball isn't going to be as valuable to UConn as Stephen Ashworth is to Creighton, then I have a waterfront property in Kansas I want to sell you. Because if that's what you think after watching any of Solo Ball's tape, I think Solo Ball is as good or better than Jaden Epps. And I think it's also just going to prove just to be another one of those bulletin board material things for Dan Hurley to kind of step on with his team. When we return, we're going to talk about Braylon Mullins and what his commitment will mean to UConn. If and well he does come, which we are predicting he will. Also, when we return, want to remind everybody that we'll be going live at 6 p.m. with Locked On Hoosiers and doing a crossover with their folks to kind of talk through what this means in terms of what it means for Indiana, what it means for UConn. Really don't think North Carolina's in the mix, so we didn't invite the Tar Heels to our little show tonight. So 6 p.m. We'll jump on about 5:50, and Braylon will announce at 6, and we'll talk from there. When we return, again, talking about Braylon and get into the rest of Big East Media Day, some quotes from people, and Dan Hurley and Andrew Hurley on Good Morning America this morning. That was very sweet. Talk to you right after this. As a podcaster and professional recruiter, I know firsthand how crucial it is to find the right talent. It's not just about filling a position. It's about finding someone who fits your company's culture and can make an impact and grow your team. This isn't just really a promo for me at the Locked On Podcast Network. I live this reality every single day, whether it's sourcing top-tier talent or helping people strategize for long-term success. Recruiting is truly a passion of mine. So if you're looking for that perfect candidate, there's absolutely no better place than LinkedIn. You can post your job for free and tap into a massive network of qualified professionals just like I do. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're simply looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses can get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's get your team the talent they need to thrive. Okay, guys, it's here. Decision day for 5-star recruit Braylon Mullins, the talented guard from Greenfield, Indiana, who is deciding between UConn, Indiana, and North Carolina tonight, 6 p.m. on 247's channel on YouTube. But we will have our live reaction show immediately after Braylon, actually during Braylon's commitment. So be sure to tune in, have both those streams up, and come to us right after for live reaction. UConn fans have been anxiously awaiting this decision. I, for one, have as well. And Mullins represents another huge opportunity for the Huskies to bolster their already impressive recruiting class with Darius Adams and Eric Riba. But will he choose UConn? I think the answer is yes. Or will he make me look like a fool and use his Indiana roots to pull him toward the Hoosiers? He lives an hour away from Bloomington. This decision has implications not just for UConn's future, but for the entire recruiting landscape and the dominoes that will fall following it. What's interesting to me is if you juxtapose this with UConn, if UConn had a 5-star recruit that was somebody that they targeted since the kid was about 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and he flipped to Indiana because of their recent success and they weren't able to lock down someone, I think it would be a major blow to Dan Hurley and his staff. So conversely, for Braylon to spurn the Hoosiers and choose UConn and the now kind of destination of all folks who really want to learn and be in the right place. Dan Hurley was on Good Morning America talking about how UConn in stores is the quintessential college town where parents are bestowing upon him the effort of trying to mold their young kids into men going forward and really kind of progressing them into being better individuals. And I think that's something that he loves about this college system is that it's not like going to coach at the Lakers, because that was one of the questions that Robin Roberts asked, is that it's a special place for him to add a guy like Braylon in, with the trust of his father and his mother to kind of mold this kid into the best version of himself. And if that best version of himself ends up being an NBA lottery pick, that's kind of what Dan does lately, right? But yeah, Braylon's a fantastic kid. He's a versatile guard, really can score from anywhere. If you watch this kid play, he reminds me, my father is a basketball aficionado, and he brought me up on all of the people that were before us, like the Pistol Petes, the Bill Waltons. And this kid reminds me of Pete Maravich in the respect of how quickly he gets up his shot with that perfect form. And there's no wasted energy. There's no, there's just, that's the best way to put it. There really is just no wasted energy when you watch this kid shoot. And he's easily the best shooter in the class, just based off of his form, his ability, his shot off the dribble. And I'm not even going to use all the coded language. He's a fantastic athlete. Like he is an elite athlete at 6'5". I'm not going to use all the codes about, with him, like he's sneaky quick. No, he's fast. Like Braylon is a fast kid. He's athletic. He can jump. He can shoot. He's a true in baseball, we'd say a 5-tool player, right? He's a 5-star for a reason. And it's not because, he can shoot it from 30, 40 feet with ease. It's because he can do all the things IQ-wise that UConn is looking for from a processing speed. But I have to say, I would be foolish if I didn't admit this, that I'm a little surprised, like not in a bad way. I'm surprised because, I think that there was always this pull, and I was hearing from people in Indiana, like, 3-4 months ago that, Indiana's going to do everything they can to keep this kid. But it's interesting to me that he chose UConn, and all it really does is really, signal that Dan Hurley truly has a lock on players of this caliber. What I mean by that is players that want to come to a place to win. Winning isn't for everyone. The accountability of Dan Hurley and his staff isn't for everyone. The comprehensive competition that they go through on a daily basis, Navy SEAL-like training. And I say that very lightly because I don't want to to kind of disparage anyone that is actually a Navy SEAL, but that kind of SEAL-like training where it's like, we're going to put you in the worst possible conditions from a basketball perspective to see what you can do and if you'll break. And if you don't break, by the time the basketball game comes around, it's just going to be about playing hoops. And then it's more about cheerleading you and being excited about what you can do on the floor. And this idea that, other coaching staffs, whether it be Indiana and North Carolina, were telling him, well, there's no room for you at UConn because they have all kinds of guards. That's what Dan Hurley wants. He doesn't want just one guard. He wants 4, everything. He wants these kids to compete. He wants to have a myriad of talent. And I think if UConn lands him, it's going to be an interesting class in the next 2 years. And I'm also going to be curious because everyone thought that Solo Ball might transfer. And he's come out and said, there was zero chance that I was transferring because I wanted to be here. If this team does the unthinkable again and wins a national championship, this pipeline of talent is not going to stop. Even if they don't win it all, if they get to the Final Four or the Elite Eight or wherever they get tripped up in the Sweet 16, this pipeline of talent that wants to be a part of something special, that has won championships in this era, it's all going to keep coming to fruition. And as Dan has said, they have a lot more access than they ever have, but they still protect their process and find the right players for them. So again, live reaction show tonight. We'll react to his decision in real time and discuss what it means for the team's future. If we get him, I will do a very minimal making fun of Indiana because I respect Jacob and what he does at Locked On Hoosiers, but I will dunk on the fans that also said that there's no way we were getting him, and also dunk on the fans that have previously been so disgusting to say that they hope that Liam McNeely hurts himself and all that stuff. So there's absolutely no room for that. I'll be shocked if Braylon chooses Indiana, but I will not stoop to that level, and I will 100% react with grace if that is the case. But again, decision tonight. We're going to talk about it. Come back and hang with us for a few more minutes as we talk about a very sweet segment with Dan Hurley and Andrea on Good Morning America this morning, coming up after this. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on America's #1 sportsbook. That's right. We're talking about FanDuel. Ever get a hunch in the middle of a game? Well, you can go check out those latest stats, view the play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook, to get started. You're back on Locked On UConn with Mark Zanetto. Yeah, this has been a fun little episode. We've kind of touched on a little bit of Big East Media Day and Alex being voted on first team, Aiden on third team preseason honors, Liam, the preseason freshman of the year. Feel like Solo got snubbed, but that's okay. The polling of the teams, UConn unanimous #1. I think I saw Jared Kotler talk about how that they weren't that the coaches didn't want to get bulletin board material to Dan. So and Dan, I don't know if you can vote for your team, but if you can't, I don't know the rules on that. He voted for Marquette, so they were technically not unanimous, but you get what I'm saying. We talked about Braylon Mullins and his reaction. His live commitment is tonight. We will be there to react to it in real time. So come check us out tonight at 6:00. But I also wanted to talk about, there were some really cool quotes from Big East Media Day. Let's go through that a little bit. And then to end the show, we'll talk about Dan Hurley and Andrea Hurley on Good Morning America. But first is Coach McDermott was talking about Ryan Kalkbrenner, and he literally said that when they asked him about Ryan being named the Big East preseason player of the year, that the best is yet to come. He's probably right. I think Ryan Kalkbrenner's got a lot of talent. He's a tall guy. He can shoot it. He can block shots. He's a 3-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. If he wins it again this year in his 5th season, he'd be the first player to ever win four times Big East Defensive Player of the Year, which is insane. We'll see if anyone else has some thoughts on that. And then, of course, our buddy Adam Zagoria from Zag's blog is down there and got some really great quotes from Rick Pitino and talked about how Rick says that a lot of teams used to have NIL when NIL was not legal, and he's glad it's legal now. I want to comment on that. First off, I think it's rich coaches comments on this now, when I've had coaches of every level, low major, mid major, high level, high major, all tell me that every team, not just teams that get caught, was using inappropriate funds in some way, shape, or form at various levels forever. Like, that's not breaking news, guys. Like, if you think if your favorite team is North Carolina, if your favorite team is Texas, if your favorite team is Florida, if you don't think that boosters were giving these kids money under the table in just like a bag, then you're crazy. Like, you truly are. If you think your team did it the right way because your coach is very respected or whatnot, and I won't name any coaches. I'm not slandering anybody, because all I'm saying is that everybody believes that this has been going on for years. Some a lot worse than others. You know, the ones that you can, and God rest his soul, like Jerry Tarkanian had a ton of NCAA violations, and it was pretty much flaunted out in the open. The teams that didn't get caught are the teams that had coaches who were very nice to media, who media probably turned a blind eye to some of the things they saw. And so for Rick to say that is kind of funny, because I'm sure he dabbled in that world. I guarantee he did, actually. I mean, just look at Louisville. You know, throwing hookers in people's windows is inappropriate funds. You know, may have not been cash, but it was definitely some stuff there. He also said, back to basketball, that Kadari Richmond is the best player in the country. Don't know if I agree with that. If he's playing UConn, Kadari Richmond is like the best player in the NBA, because his stats just go through the roof. So if he's consistent, I think he has a chance to be one of the better players in the country. He also, Shaheen Holloway was talking about not caring about his rankings. We talked about that. They got ranked 10th in an 11-team league. Rick Pitino also said that he sees college basketball forming a super league of 18 to 20 teams to brace against the power of college football and kind of offset some of that money. I wonder if UConn's going to be a part of that, or if they're going to continue to pursue Big 12 and big-time football. I think some of the other stuff was from our guy, Alex Karaban. We have a chance to three-peat, and that's motivating me every single day. I love it, Alex. That is super exciting to hear because obviously you were underrated. You should have been on preseason All-American, and I will say that all day, every day. Tim English, who I respect and love, think he had a comment I think is pretty cool. He thinks there's a reason we haven't seen a lot of players transfer out of Providence is because they honestly treat their players. I think the quote was, "We treat our players well, and if the player's not happy, they can leave." And that's kind of like, I think that's the easiest way to crystallize anybody. So a lot of this is great stuff. I really appreciate you guys watching. I think the last thing I'll talk about is it was really cool to see Andrea Hurley on Good Morning America with Dan. Robin Roberts asked about why did he stay with the with the Huskies when he could have went to the Lakers. And I don't really think you talk about people really give Dan enough credit for being the family man that he is, because let's face it, if he was this kind of power hungry, ego driven, drunk off his ego that a lot of people think he is, then he would have left for LA, because he conquered what he needed to conquer in college basketball to win back-to-back national championships, to then have the infamous Law and Order do an episode where they essentially kill you off because people already had the haters. People, Kentucky offered you money and you turned it down to stay with your team. I think sometimes he's misunderstood, and to hear him talk about how much he loves UConn and his Jersey City and in Jersey in general, because all of their family lives there. It really goes to show who he is as a person and why I'm so grateful for him that he's our coach, because we know that he's always going to give us his best. And Andrea is obviously there to support. He talked about, the silly idiosyncrasies of, spraying holy or dipping or spraying holy water on the court, or putting cloves of garlic on all four corners of the court, and wearing the dragon underwear, feeling like that's armor. Like, all these things are just so weird and silly, but it's who it makes him who he is. And I really appreciate him for it, because all those little quirks and idiosyncrasies that he has gets us who we see on the court, which is someone that is maniacal about winning and the process, because this team is, again, right in the thick of things. And I'm just so happy that true basketball is coming around the corner, where we can actually watch the games, digest it, break them down, and give that to you in the future. So again, guys, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. If you haven't seen that Good Morning America, Good Morning America, interview with Robin Roberts this morning, go find it. It's worth 8 minutes of your time or whatever it was. So go check that out. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure that toughness meter is always rising, and as always, go Huskies.